My name is Diana Mercer. I'm 29. And I didn't realize my whole life was about to split cleanly in two until my fiance said one sentence so casually, so confidently, that it sounded like he'd practiced it in the mirror. If you don't like my lifestyle, Evan said, zipping up a duffel bag like this was just another weekend plan, then leave. Not a shout, not a slam, not even a fight at first. Just a sentence. We'd been together 5 years, engaged for 8 months, wedding date set, deposits paid, seating chart drafts saved on my laptop, my name on a lease, my furniture in the living room, my toothbrush next to his, my life braided into his so tightly I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. And he still looked at me like I was being difficult for wanting basic respect. I've never been the chaotic one. I'm the person who keeps the lights on, literally and figuratively. I've worked as a lineman for 6 years, long days, hard weather, solid pay. I clear about 72 grand a year with good benefits and a 401k match. I'm not flashy, but I'm stable. I build, I fix, I plan. Evan was the opposites of me in a way that used to feel exciting. I met him at a backyard barbecue, one of those late summer evenings where everyone's laughing too loud and the air smells like charcoal and spilled beer. I was the quiet one flipping burgers like my life depended on not poisoning anyone. Evan was the one floating between groups, making people laugh, taking pictures, catching little moments like they mattered. He told me I looked serious in a hot way. I told him my burger-flipping face wasn't a personality trait. He laughed like I'd said something brilliant, and suddenly we were talking on the back porch until 2 in the morning. Different worlds. Somehow it worked. At least I thought it did. We moved in together after 18 months. 2-bedroom apartment, decent neighborhood, $1,350 a month. We agreed to split it down the middle, like adults. In reality, it was rarely split. Evan's income came in waves. He did freelance creative work, photo gigs, promotions, event content. 1 month he'd book something decent. The next, nothing. He'd pick up retail shifts to fill gaps, but the gaps never really closed. So I covered the rent more often than not. $950 from me, $400 from him, and a lot of promises about next month being better. And I didn't mind at first, because love makes you generous. Love makes you believe in potential. Love makes you think, we're building something. It's temporary. Then, 8 months ago, I proposed. Yes, I proposed. Not because I wanted to rewrite tradition, not because I needed control, but because I knew what I wanted, and I was tired of waiting for Evan to get around to deciding our future. I took him to an overlook he loved, a place he'd once told me had the perfect sunset angle. I saved for 4 months for a ring I could barely afford. I skipped little things, takeout, new work boots, even a weekend trip with my coworkers, because I wanted to give him something real. When I opened the box, he cried. He said yes. Then, without even standing up, he pulled out his phone and took selfies with the ring before we got back to the car. That should have been my first warning. We set the wedding date for 10 months after the proposal. His parents offered to cover half the cost, about 14 grand. I was handling the other half. That's when Leah started showing up like a shadow that always landed in our photos. Leah had been Evan's friend since his early 20s, college adjacent, long history, too many inside jokes. She was one of those women who looked like she'd stepped out of a catalog without trying. Perfect hair, perfect nails, the kind of charm that felt sweet until you realized it had teeth. Evan always said she was just a friend, and maybe once she was, but the engagement changed something. Suddenly, Leah was everywhere. Every post Evan made, Leah was in the comments, flirty little jokes wrapped in innocence. His phone buzzing at dinner, memes from Leah, invites from Leah, quick questions from Leah that somehow required a 20-minute call. And every invite came with a fake little bow on it. You should bring Diana too. Except I was never actually welcome. It was always on my work nights, always 2 hours away, always one ticket left, or cars full, or we're doing something you'd hate. And Evan would look at me like I was unreasonable for noticing the pattern. The first time I met Leah properly was at an engagement party one of Evan's friends threw. Leah showed up late and made an entrance like she was walking onto a stage. She hugged Evan too long. Then, when he introduced me, "This is Diana, my fiancé," Leah turned that bright smile on me like a flashlight in my eyes. "So you're the one who got Evan to settle down," she said, and her handshake was just a little too tight. "Impressive." I played it cool. "Just got lucky." "Oh, you sure did," she replied. But she wasn't looking at me when she said it. After that, Evan started going out more. Nights that somehow included Leah. Dinners that turned into concerts. Quick drinks that became stumbling in at 2 a.m., smelling like bonfire smoke and someone else's perfume. I tried to bring it up a month before the camping trip. We were reviewing catering options, menus, guest counts, deposits. Evan was half listening, smiling at his phone. "Who's that?" I asked. He didn't even hesitate. "Leah. She's planning a camping trip. 3 days up at Mirror Lake. Wants to know if I'm in." "When?" I already knew the answer would hurt. "Next weekend. Leave Friday, back Monday." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "Evan, we have the final venue walkthrough Sunday, scheduled 2 months ago." He waved it off like I'd reminded him the trash needed to go out. "We can reschedule." "We can't just—" "Everyone's going," he cut in. "I haven't done a real getaway in forever." I stared at him, feeling something cold slide under my ribs. "I don't like how much time you're spending with her," I said quietly. His face changed, sharp, offended. "Are you serious?" "I'm not accusing you of anything," I tried, even though my throat was tight. "I'm saying it's weird how she's suddenly everywhere." He laughed, just once, like I was adorable. "You're jealous. That's what this is." "Evan, she's my friend Diana," he snapped. "You don't get to tell me who I hang out with." There it was, the flip. Make me the problem. Make my discomfort sound like insecurity. Make my boundaries sound like control. I dropped it, but my gut didn't. The week of the trip, it got worse. One day I came home early, half day at work after we crushed a major deadline. I thought I'd surprise him, take him to that Thai place he loved. I walked in and found him on the couch, FaceTiming Leah. He was laughing, big, open laughter I hadn't heard from him in weeks. When he saw me, his expression flickered. Just a second. Then he smiled too hard. "Diana's home," he said quickly. "Gotta go. See you Friday." He hung up fast. I stood there with my keys still in my hand. "What was that about?" I asked. "Just camping stuff," he said, too casual. "Leah's bringing the tents." Yeah, I wasn't overreacting. The argument happened Thursday night, 20 hours before he was supposed to leave from Mirror Lake. I came home from a brutal day around 7. We'd had a power outage across a major section of the grid, 2,000 homes, angry calls, emergency crews, 10 hours of coordination and pressure, and people acting like you personally ruined their dinner plans. I walked into our bedroom and stopped. Evan was packing. Not light packing, not throw some clothes in a bag. Serious packing. Camping gear spread across the bed like he was heading to Everest. Sleeping bag, portable chair, expensive moisture-wicking shirts he'd bought last month and never worn. 3 swimsuits laid out for the lake like this was a vacation shoot. And then I saw it. The cologne I bought him for Christmas, the one he saved for special occasions. That little detail hit me harder than all the rest. Because it didn't scream friends camping trip. It screamed performance. I stayed in the doorway, still in my work clothes. "Packing heavy for 3 days," I said. Evan didn't look up. "I want to be prepared. Weather's supposed to be perfect. Leah said the lake's amazing this time of year." I watched him fold a shirt with careful hands, like he was folding my feelings into a neat little square too. "I was thinking I should come along," I said. He froze. Then he looked up, eyes wide like I'd just suggested something insane. "What? No." "No," I repeated. "This is my friend group, Diana," he said, voice sharpening. "You don't even know most of them. I'm your fiancé." His jaw tightened. "You're not invited." The words landed with a quiet brutality. "If it's just friends," I said, calm enough to scare myself, "why is it a problem if I come?" He stood up, crossed his arms. "This is exactly what I mean. The jealousy." "I'm not jealous," I said. "I'm paying half a wedding, and you're blowing off our venue walkthrough to disappear into the woods with Leah." He scoffed. "We're friends. Not every woman wants to sleep with me, Diana. That's your problem, not mine." My throat went tight. "My problem is watching you put her before us." Evan's eyes flashed. Then he said it, cold, casual, like he'd been waiting for it. "If you don't like my lifestyle," he said, "then leave." The room went silent. 5 years. A ring. A wedding. A life. And he offered me the door like a solution. Something in me didn't break. It clicked. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I nodded once. "Okay." Evan blinked. "Okay, what?" I didn't answer. I walked past him to the closet, pulled out my duffel bag. His voice rose. "What are you doing?" "Packing," I said, and my hands were steady in a way that felt unreal. "Diana, don't be dramatic," he snapped. "I'm going camping. I'll be back Monday." I kept packing. "Stop," he said, stepping closer. "You're being ridiculous." I took my phone out and texted my best friend, Harper. "Need a place to stay. You around?" 30 seconds later. Doors unlocked. Guest room's yours. Evan watched my face as I read it, and for the first time that night, I saw something like panic. "You're seriously leaving over a camping trip?" he demanded. I zipped the duffel bag, finally looked him in the eyes. "You told me to leave if I didn't like how you live your life," I said softly. "So I'm leaving." His mouth opened, then closed, like he couldn't believe consequences were real. I walked out of the bedroom. He followed me into the living room, still talking, still trying to rewrite what he'd said. "I didn't mean it like that," he insisted. "Don't do this. Don't make this into something it's not." But it was already something. It was everything. I grabbed my keys and my work bag. He reached for my arm. "Diana." I pulled away. Then I turned at the door and gave him the calmest goodbye I've ever spoken. "Have fun." And I left. Harper didn't ask questions when I showed up with my duffel bag and my face set like stone. That's what real friendship looks like. Someone opening the door at 9 at night, taking one look at you, and deciding your pain doesn't need to perform to be believed. "Guest room's made up," she said softly, stepping aside. "Water's in the fridge. You want to talk? I'm here. If you don't, I'll pretend you're just visiting." I nodded like that meant something, like I still knew how to respond normally. Inside me, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a storm, except the storm wasn't screaming or crying. It was planning. Because the moment Evan told me to leave, something changed. Not in him, in me. I lay on Harper's guest bed, staring at the ceiling fan, watching it cut shadows into the dark. My phone buzzed once. A text from Evan. "You're being ridiculous." I didn't reply. Then another. "I'm going Friday morning. Stop making this dramatic." I didn't reply. A third came in, the kind that always used to hook me, because it had that hurt tone that made me feel guilty. "I can't believe you're doing this." And for half a second, my old reflex rose up. "Explain yourself. Prove you're reasonable. Fix it." But then I remembered the way he said it. "If you don't like my lifestyle, then leave." Like I was an inconvenience. Like I was the problem. I turned my phone face down and went to sleep. Not peacefully, but I slept. Friday morning, I woke before Harper did. My body moved like it had a mission, even if my heart didn't want to admit it. I made coffee, stood at the kitchen window, and opened the location sharing app. Evan had forgotten to turn it off. His little dot sat still for a while, then moved. North, toward Mirror Lake, toward Leah, toward 3 days of freedom he claimed he deserved. The second his dot was far enough away that he couldn't double back on a whim, I exhaled. Not a sob, not a prayer, an exhale like a door closing. I texted Harper, "Need your truck, moving out today." Her response came fast. "Give me 20, coffee on the way." The apartment looked normal when I walked in. That was the strangest part. Same doormat, same key turning in the lock, same faint scent of fabric softener and Evan's cologne clinging to the hallway. Like nothing had happened, like I hadn't been told to leave the life I built. Evan's camping mess was gone. He'd taken his bag, of course, but little traces remained. A stray sock, a crumpled snack wrapper, the empty spot on the dresser where his watch usually sat. I stood in the living room and stared at our couch. Our couch, except it wasn't ours. I bought it 2 years ago. $1,600 on my credit card after Evan said, "Babe, I'll pay you back as soon as my next gig hits." That gig hit. The payback didn't. I walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out an old folder of receipts I'd started keeping back when my gut began whispering that one day I'd need proof. I didn't know it would be today. I sat at the table and started a list. Item, cost, date, proof. It wasn't spite. It was insurance. Because I knew how people like Leah, and people like Evan when they were cornered, worked. They didn't argue facts. They argued feelings. They made you look crazy. So I wrote down the facts. Then Harper knocked. She came in carrying coffee like it was a weapon, took one look at my face and said, "Tell me what to lift." "I'm taking everything I paid for," I said. My voice sounded steady even to me. "All of it." Harper set the coffee down, rolled her shoulders. "Okay, let's clean house." We started with the couch. The couch was symbolic. It was where I'd sat through Evan's mood swings, where I'd watched him scroll Leah's posts, where I'd tried to pretend I wasn't lonely sitting next to the man who claimed he loved me. Harper and I maneuvered it out the door, down 3 flights of stairs, sweating and cursing under our breath. A neighbor peeked out and asked, "Everything okay?" Harper didn't miss a beat. Spring cleaning. The couch went into her truck. Then the TV, mine. The entertainment center, mine. The kitchen table, mine from before Evan ever moved in. My desk, my office chair, my bookshelf, my dresser. The apartment started changing shape. And with every item that left, something inside me felt less trapped. By the end of the first trip, the living room already looked wrong. like someone had erased the middle of a picture. Harper leaned against the doorframe, coffee gone, face flushed. Storage unit? Already rented, I said. Her eyebrows lifted. You're terrifying. I'm tired, I corrected. We made 2 trips. I paid for a 10x10 climate-controlled unit, $95 a month, and 6 months up front. Because I wasn't just leaving. I was making sure I couldn't be dragged back by convenience or guilt or we can talk about it. When we returned to the apartment after the second trip, it looked like a break-in had happened, except it wasn't theft. It was extraction. Evan's decor was still there, his art prints, his decorative pillows, the little fake plants Leah had gifted him as a joke. But all the functional life pieces, the things you needed to live comfortably, were gone. And suddenly the apartment matched the truth. It was pretty on the surface, and empty underneath. Then came the bedroom. I packed my clothes first, fast, methodical. Shoes, books, my work gear, tools, the camping gear I owned, bathroom stuff, kitchen appliances I'd bought, pots and pans. I left him the cheap basics. 1 set of plates, 1 set of silverware, a couple mugs. Not because I was kind, because I was fair. Fair is what people call cruel when they're used to you overgiving. I was in the closet when I saw it. Evan's ring box. Not the wedding ring, we weren't there yet. The engagement ring. I walked to the dresser and opened the jewelry drawer. There it was, a simple band, clean, elegant. The kind of ring that looked like a promise. The kind of ring I'd starved my budget for. $3,200. My money, my faith, my future. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I picked it up and slipped it into my pocket. Not with anger, with finality. Harper watched me do it, didn't comment, just nodded like she understood what that little motion meant. By late afternoon, the apartment was quiet. Not peaceful, just hollow. Harper sat on the floor and said, "What's next?" I pulled out my phone. Now I handle the lease. The landlord was a man named Ron, 60-something, permanently unimpressed by everyone. The kind of guy who'd seen every breakup story and every tenant excuse in existence. He picked up on the second ring. "Ron," I said, "it's Diana. Evan and I are done. I'm moving out. I need my name off the lease." He sighed like he'd been expecting this call from the day we moved in. "Sorry to hear it. You're both on the lease through March. Early termination requires 60 days and a penalty." "I'll pay it," I said instantly. "I just want my name off by Monday." A pause. Then Ron asked the question landlords always ask, but it sounded different coming from him, like a warning. "He can cover the full rent on his own?" I swallowed. "That's not my problem anymore," I said. Ron exhaled. "Fair enough. Come by Sunday at 10. We'll do the paperwork." The next call was harder. Not because I felt guilty, because it made everything real. I called Evan's father, Walter. Walter had always treated me like family. Former electrician, straight shooter, quiet kindness. The kind of man who didn't say much, but when he did, it mattered. He answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said. "Diana, everything okay?" "No," I admitted. "I need to tell you something before you hear it from anyone else." A pause. "What's going on?" "Evan and I are done," I said. "The wedding is off." Silence. Not judgment. Not blame. Just silence. "Then, Sophie, what happened?" I told him. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just laid out the timeline, Leah, the trip, the walkthrough, the ultimatum. When I finished, Walter didn't rush to defend his son. He just breathed out, slow. "That girl," he said finally, voice tight. "Leah." My throat tightened. "You know about her?" "I've seen the way she comments on his posts," he said. "I've seen him light up when her name pops up. I didn't want to assume, but I've been wondering." I closed my eyes. "I'm sure about this," I said. Another pause. Then Walter's voice went gentler. "You okay?" That almost broke me, because it was the first time in days someone asked that without trying to twist the answer into something convenient for them. "I will be," I said. "If you need anything," Walter said, "you call me. You hear me?" I didn't know what to say to that, so I just whispered, "Thank you." We hung up. That evening, back at Harper's, I wrote the note. Not a long letter, not a rant, not a plea. I wrote it on the back of one of our wedding planning checklists because it felt poetic in the coldest way. Took what was mine. Rings being sold. Lease is in your name now. Rent's all yours. Venue deposits are non-refundable. Enjoy your freedom. I stared at it after I finished. It wasn't cruel. It was clean. And clean hurts more than messy sometimes, because it leaves no room to pretend. I put the note in my bag ready for Sunday. Harper sat beside me on the couch and said quietly, "He's going to lose his mind when he comes back." "I know," I said. And for the first time since the ultimatum, A flicker of something rose in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, relief. Because the truth was, he told me to leave. So I left. And now he was about to find out that when you tell the person holding your life together to walk away, they don't always come back. Evan came back Sunday night. I didn't see it happen, but I didn't need to. I could feel it. The first text came in at 6:12 p.m. Hey, home early. Where are you? I was sitting on Harper's couch, feet tucked under me, a mug of tea cooling in my hands. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching it. I'd been waiting for this moment all weekend, not with excitement, but with a quiet readiness, like bracing for a storm you already boarded the windows for. I didn't respond. At 6:27 p.m., another text. Did you seriously take the couch? At 6:41 p.m. Diana, answer me, this isn't funny. Harper glanced at my phone, lighting up again and again. You want me to take it and throw it in the lake? I shook my head. No, let it ring. Because I knew what he'd walked into. An apartment stripped down to the truth. No couch to collapse onto after a weekend pretending to be single. No TV to distract himself with. No desk to dump his gear on. No bed that felt like ours anymore. Just empty space and consequences. By 7:15 p.m., the tone changed. Okay, I get that you're mad. We need to talk. Then, you didn't have to do all this. Then the one he knew used to work. You're really hurting me right now. I put the phone face down. Because for 5 years, his hurt had always come first. Even when it was caused by his choices. Even when my hurt had been ignored, minimized, or laughed off. That pattern ended the moment he told me to leave. At 8:03 p.m., the calls started. Back to back, no pauses, no space to breathe. Harper counted out loud. That's 6, 7, 8. I let every single one go to voicemail. By 8:30, the text came in fast enough that the phone buzzed nonstop. Where's my TV? You can't just steal my stuff. We live together. That's our furniture. Diana, this is insane. Call me now. Funny how it became our furniture only after it disappeared. When I was paying for it, it was just there. Expected. Invisible. Harper handed me a grilled cheese sandwich like we were having a normal Sunday night. You're really not going to engage at all? She asked. I took a bite, chewed slowly. He told me to leave, I said. I left. That's the end of my part. At 9:12 p.m., my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Curiosity won. Hello? Diana? A woman's voice snapped. This is Kelsey, Evan's friend. Of course it was. Kelsey, one of Leah's orbiters. Loud, opinionated, always ready to jump into other people's business like it was a sport. What's going on? She demanded. Evan's losing his mind. He just got back and half the apartment is gone. I took what I paid for, I said evenly. You can't do that, she shot back. You don't just empty a shared apartment and disappear. I didn't disappear, I replied. I moved out, like he told me to. There was a pause, brief, but telling. That's not what he meant, Kelsey said quickly. You know that. I know exactly what he meant. This is vindictive and childish, she snapped. You're punishing him for going on a camping trip. I laughed. Not loudly. Just once. How was Mirror Lake? I asked. Silence. Thick, sudden. Leah's just a friend, Kelsey said, slower now. You're paranoid. Tell Evan if he wants to discuss logistics, I said, my voice calm enough to scare myself. He can email me. Lose this number. I hung up and blocked it before she could respond. Harper raised an eyebrow. Damn. Block the rest, I said. By 10 o'clock p.m., I had 14 missed calls, 23 unread texts, 9 voicemails. I didn't listen to a single one, because I didn't need to hear him scream to know what he was saying. I'd heard variations of it for years. You're overreacting. You're twisting things. Why can't you just trust me? What I hadn't heard until now was silence, my silence, and it was driving him crazy. At 10:47 p.m., Harper's doorbell rang. We both froze. She stood slowly, peeked through the door viewer, then turned back to me with a look that was half amused, half wary. Your ex-fiancé is on my porch, she said. He looks feral. I set my mug down. Let me handle it. I opened the door. Evan stood there in the same clothes he'd left in on Friday. Camping boots still dusty, hair unwashed, eyes bloodshot and wild like he hadn't slept since Mirror Lake. What the hell is wrong with you? He demanded, stepping forward. I leaned against the doorframe, blocking entry. Evening, I said calmly. How was camping? Don't do that, he snapped. You gutted the apartment. You took everything. I took what was mine. Our furniture. My furniture. He laughed, sharp and disbelieving. We're engaged. You don't get to erase our entire life over a camping trip. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the ring, held it up between us. About that, I said. His face drained of color. What are you doing with my ring? Selling it, I said. Wedding's canceled. Your dad knows. You can't do that without talking to me, he said, voice cracking. Diana, please, we can fix this. Leah's nothing, he rushed on. You're everything. You're overreacting. I didn't mean what I said. I tilted my head. You didn't mean leave? I didn't mean forever. That's the problem, I said quietly. I did. His expression shifted, panic bleeding into anger. You're controlling, he spat. This is emotional abuse. You can't just take everything. I left you everything you own, I replied. What I owned left with me. I'll call the cops. Go ahead, I said. I have receipts. He opened his mouth to shout, and Harper stepped into view behind me. Evan, she said calmly, phone in hand. You're on my property, uninvited. It's after 11. Leave before I call the police for real. He looked between us, saw the line he couldn't cross. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, I said, closing the door. It is. I locked it. Through the door, I heard him shout something incoherent, then heavy footsteps, then the slam of a car door, tires screeching as he pulled away. Harper leaned against the wall, exhaled. Jesus, she said, that escalated fast. I sank onto the couch, my hands finally shaking now that it was over. That was just the beginning, I said. And I was right. Because the next wave wasn't Evan. It was his mother. The text from Grace came the next afternoon. No greeting, no question. Just a command. Bernie's Diner, 6 p.m. Be there. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my thumb hovering, like it might accidentally comply. Then I locked my phone and set it face down on the table. I didn't owe her a meeting. I didn't owe her an explanation. And I definitely didn't owe her obedience. At 6:15, my phone rang. Same unknown number. I answered, not because I was afraid, but because I was done letting people talk about me instead of to me. Diana, Grace said sharply, I'm sitting at Bernie's waiting for you. Where are you? At home, I replied. I told you to meet me. No, I corrected. You demanded. I declined. Her voice hardened instantly. After 5 years with my son, you owe me the respect of a conversation. I don't owe anyone anything, I said calmly. We're done. Don't you dare hang up on me, she snapped. My daughter. Your son, I said evenly. A beat of silence. My son is devastated, she continued, louder now. You took everything from that apartment. You will return the furniture, apologize, and fix this mess you created. I'm not returning anything, I said. It was mine. Half of it belongs to Evan, she insisted. You live together. You don't get to steal everything because you're throwing a fit. Then call the cops, I said. I have receipts. This is financial abuse, Grace hissed. I could have you arrested. I almost laughed. Good luck with that, I said, and hung up. Blocked the number. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 10 minutes later, someone started pounding on Harper's front door. Not knocking. Pounding. Aggressive, furious, relentless. Harper looked at me. Let me guess. The mom. I've got it, I said, already standing. When I opened the door, Grace stood on the porch, finger raised, before I'd even finished turning the knob. How dare you hang up on me, she shouted. How dare you disrespect me like that? I didn't invite you here, I said coolly. I don't need an invitation to defend my son, she snapped. You destroyed his life. No, I replied. I left it. She stepped closer, invading my space. He's living back at home because of you. He's living back at home because he chose a camping trip with another woman over his wedding, I said. Grace scoffed. Leah is a friend. Why can't you get that through your head? Evan is allowed to have friends. And I'm allowed to leave relationships where I'm disrespected, I said. She opened her mouth to argue, and then a familiar engine cut through the tension. A pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Walter's truck. He stepped out, took one look at the scene, his wife mid-rant on someone else's porch, and his face went completely flat. Grace, he said, what are you doing? She spun toward him, talking to Diana about what she did to our son. Walter walked up the steps, nodded at me once. She told him to leave, he said plainly. He left. Grace's mouth opened, closed. He stole all her furniture, she snapped. He took his things, Walter corrected. He turned to me. Did you take anything that wasn't yours? No, I said. Walter nodded. Then he turned back to his wife. Then there's no theft. Grace stared at him like he'd slapped her. Whose side are you on? She demanded. The side that makes sense, he replied. You drove over here to yell at someone who removed herself from a bad situation after our son gave her an ultimatum. She made one mistake, Grace cried. One. Walter let out a short, humorless laugh. I've seen Leah's comments for months. This didn't start last weekend. Grace's face flushed red. So you're just going to let her suffer? I'm going to let her face the consequences of her choices, he said. Now get in the truck. I'm not done, she protested. Yes, you are. He turned to me, voice softer. I'm sorry about this. It's okay, I said, and I meant it. Walter pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to me. That's my direct number, he said. If Evan or Grace gives you any more trouble, you call me. I took it. Thank you. Grace glared at me one last time. This isn't over. Walter didn't even look at her when he replied. It is. He guided her to the truck and drove off, her protests muffled behind closed doors. Harper let out a low whistle. Your ex's dad just shut down his own wife for you. I leaned against the doorframe, my legs weak. That, Harper said, was brutal. After that, Evan stopped yelling. He started performing. Within a week of the breakup, his social media flipped like a switch. Photos with Leah, concerts, events, smiling selfies, captions like, finally feeling understood. Real ones recognize real. The comments flooded in. Fire emojis, hearts, congratulations. I watched it the way you watch a slow-motion car crash. Because I knew Leah. She didn't want responsibility. She wanted attention. And Evan, freshly single, emotionally raw, desperate to prove he hadn't lost, was the perfect accessory. For exactly 4 days. On day 5, Leah posted a photo with a different man. On day 6, another. On day 7, Evan commented, "Who's that?" She didn't reply. When Evan showed up at a promotion event where Leah was working and tried to corner her, she laughed, and told him in front of coworkers that she wasn't looking for anything serious. Thought you knew that, she said. He didn't take it well. There was a scene. Security got involved. Videos circulated. By week 2, rent was due. $1,350. Evan didn't have it. His creative income barely cleared $800 that month. Photography gigs had dried up. Turns out a lot of those connections came through me. He called his parents. They bailed him out once, $1,600 with conditions. Full-time job, no partying, get it together. He took the money, ignored the conditions. Week 3 was worse. Leah moved on publicly to one of Evan's friends. Posted a cozy morning after photo in his bed, wearing his shirt. The meltdown was spectacular. Evan went scorched earth online. Called her fake, a snake, a user. People clapped back. Someone brought up the $300 he'd borrowed months earlier and never repaid. Another mentioned he'd bailed on commitments. Another said they'd warned Diana months ago. The tide turned fast. By week 4, Evan was back in his childhood bedroom. Same posters, same creaky bed, same ceiling he'd stared at as a teenager dreaming about making it. Only now he was 29, unemployed, single, and humiliated. And me? I was moving forward. I found a 1-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood, $950 a month. Cheaper than what I'd been covering before. I moved my things out of storage and made the space mine. New couch, bigger TV, a desk that faced the window instead of a wall. I joined a gym, lifted 4 days a week. Not for revenge, just because I finally had the energy. I reconnected with coworkers, went to happy hours I'd skipped for years, joined a rec basketball league through work. And somewhere between rebuilding my routine and breathing without tension for the first time in years, I met Caleb. He wasn't flashy. He was solid. And that terrified Evan more than anything. Because while he was losing Leah, I had upgraded. I met Caleb 2 months after everything imploded. Not on an app, not through friends, not because I was ready. I met him because life kept going. It was a work mixer, one of those awkward, catered events where everyone pretends they're networking but really just wants the free food. I almost didn't go. Old habits die hard, and for years I'd skipped things like that because Evan always had plans, or opinions, or moods. But that night I went. Caleb was standing near the drink table, reading the tiny placard next to the hummus like it contained state secrets. He looked up when I laughed at something one of my coworkers said, and we made eye contact, normal, unforced, uncharged, in a way that felt safe. We started talking about work first. He was in operations for a logistics firm that partnered with our utility division. Smart, direct, quietly confident. No performance, no posturing. At one point he asked, "Do you always listen this closely when people talk, or am I getting special treatment?" I blinked, surprised. "I listen," I said. "It's kind of my thing." He smiled. That explains a lot. We didn't exchange numbers that night. That mattered, because it meant neither of us was trying to fill a void. A week later, we ran into each other again, coffee shop near my new place. He remembered my order, asked if I'd ever checked out a trail just outside the city. "That could be a good first hike," he said, not assuming. "If you're interested." I was. Our first date was 8 miles. Moderate difficulty, no shortcuts. He kept pace, didn't complain, didn't try to impress me by pushing ahead. We talked about music, about work, about what it felt like to start over in your late 20s when everyone else seemed settled. He didn't flinch when I mentioned my broken engagement. He didn't ask for details. He just nodded and said, "That couldn't have been easy." And somehow that was enough. Caleb cooked on our third date. Actually cooked from scratch. He chopped vegetables while telling me about a contract he'd just landed. Excited, not arrogant. Proud, not defensive. I stood in his kitchen, leaning against the counter, and felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Peace, not butterflies. Not anxiety. Just steadiness. It scared me more than chaos ever had. Evan found out about Caleb 3 weeks later. I didn't tell him, didn't warn him, didn't post anything dramatic. Someone tagged me in a group photo at a trivia night. That was enough. The first message came at 11:07 p.m. on a Tuesday, from an unknown account. "Hey, I just wanted to warn you about Diana. She's not who you think she is." Caleb forwarded it to me with one line. "Your ex?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Then came the second message, half an hour later. "Seriously, I'm trying to help you. She's controlling and manipulative. She isolated me from my friends for years. Get out while you can." Caleb didn't respond. He didn't block. He waited. The third message came the next night. "You think you're special? You're not. She'll replace you the second you're inconvenient. That's what she does." Then another. And another. Each one more unhinged than the last. "She destroyed my life, took everything I had, left me homeless. She plays the victim, always has. Have fun being suffocated." Caleb screenshot every single one. Sent them to me in one thread. Then texted, "Your ex is completely unhinged. I'm saving these." I forwarded them to my lawyer friend with a simple message. "What are my options?" His reply came back within the hour. "Save everything. Don't respond. If he contacts either of you again, you've got enough for a restraining order." I created a folder on my phone. Screenshots, dates, times. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted peace. Evan didn't stop immediately. He escalated. He showed up at my old office, only to be told I'd transferred months earlier. He sent long emails that started with apologies and ended with accusations. He posted vague rants online about women who destroy men and false narratives. I didn't engage. Neither did Caleb. And that silence, that was what finally broke him. Because Evan had always thrived on reaction. And now, there was none. One night, sitting on my couch, in my apartment, Caleb glanced at my phone, buzzing again, and asked gently, "Do you want me to step in?" I shook my head. "No, you don't need to fight my battles." He nodded. "Okay, just know I'm here." That sentence hit harder than any grand gesture ever had. Because it wasn't about control. It was about choice. The messages stopped 2 weeks later. Not because Evan found peace, but because he found a new audience. A party. A stage. One last place where he could make a scene. And I didn't know it yet, but I was invited. The invitation came from Greg. A simple group text. "Housewarming party this Saturday. New place. Come by if you're free." Greg and I went back years. College friends, shared projects, mutual respect. I hesitated when I saw his name light up my phone. There was a good chance Evan would be there. Word traveled fast in overlapping circles. Caleb noticed the pause. "You don't have to go," he said, not pushing. "We can make other plans." I thought about it for a moment. About how much of my life I'd spent avoiding discomfort so someone else wouldn't feel threatened. About how often I'd made myself smaller so a man could feel bigger. "I wanted to go," I said finally. "I'm not hiding anymore." Caleb smiled. "Then let's go." Greg's new place was buzzing when we arrived. 30, maybe 40 people scattered between the living room and backyard. Music humming, laughter spilling into the night. The kind of warmth that comes from people celebrating something good. Caleb fit in easily. Talked with strangers. Helped Greg carry drinks. Didn't cling to me or posture. I felt normal. Then Greg pulled me aside. "Hey," he said quietly. "Just a heads up, Evan's here." I nodded. "Is he alone?" Greg grimaced. "Yeah, showed up uninvited about 20 minutes ago. He's not in great shape." I exhaled slowly. "Thanks for the warning." We stayed, we mingled, we laughed. I could feel Evan's eyes on me sometimes. Sharp, resentful, tracking my movements like I owed him something. Each time he saw Caleb's hand at the small of my back, his expression darkened. At around 9, it happened. I was mid-conversation when Evan staggered closer, drink sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "Diana," he said loudly, "we need to talk." The music dipped. Conversations paused. People looked. I met his eyes, calm and steady. There's nothing to talk about, I said. Please leave me alone. He laughed, bitter. You really moved on fast. I moved on when you told me to leave, I replied. His gaze flicked to Caleb. So this is the upgrade? Caleb didn't react, just stood there, relaxed, unbothered. Evan sneered. You really downgraded, Diana. I felt Caleb shift slightly, not to confront, not to escalate, just present. I smiled at Evan. You should go. That's when he snapped. You ruined my life, he shouted. You turned everyone against me. You took everything. I took my things, I said evenly, and I left. People were watching now, phones half raised. Greg moving closer, concerned. Evan stepped forward, too close. His balance wavered. Caleb spoke then, calm and clear. This is embarrassing. You need to leave. Evan's eyes flared. He lunged, toward me, toward Caleb. I couldn't even tell. But he misjudged the step. His heel caught, his momentum carried him forward. Straight into the dessert table. The crash was spectacular. A 3-tier chocolate cake collapsed under his weight. Frosting smeared across his face and shirt. Plates clattered to the ground. As he tried to stand, there was a loud ripping sound. The seam of his jeans split down the back. The backyard went silent. Then someone laughed. Then another. Evan froze, horror dawning as he realized what had happened. He reached behind himself, face red, frosting dripping. Stop laughing, he said, voice cracking. Greg stepped in. That's enough. You need to go. Evan looked around. At phones. At faces. At me standing there with Caleb's arm around my waist. The anger drained, replaced by humiliation. You're all terrible, he yelled, backing toward the gate. All of you. He turned and hurried out, one hand wiping cake from his face, the other trying to cover the rip in his jeans. We heard his car start, tires squeal, and then he was gone. The party was quiet for a beat. Then laughter broke out again, uneasy, disbelieving. Greg sighed, surveying the wrecked cake. Well, that's one way to christen a house. We left around midnight. Back at my place, Caleb and I made coffee and sat on the couch, my couch, surrounded by the life I'd rebuilt. My phone buzzed. A group chat lit up with clips from the party. Evan's stumble, the cake, the rip, the exit. I watched them once. Then I locked my phone and set it down. Caleb looked at me. You okay? I nodded, a small laugh escaping. Yeah, I really am. Because the truth was simple. Evan tried to take one last swing at my peace. And instead he exposed himself. I leaned back, breathed in the quiet, and felt something settle deep in my chest. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't need an audience. It just needs a door you're willing to close and the strength not to open it again.